Reformed, hello. Welcome to the First Reformed Church of New Brunswick as we open the 2024 Spring Lunchtime Recital Series. We are excited to be able to share another afternoon of wonderful live music with both an in-person and online audience. We are joined today by New Brunswick native, singer, songwriter, and guitarist Spook Candy, who will be performing beautiful and witty folk tunes about social justice. This is an interactive event, and for those of you joining us on YouTube, we invite you to use the chat feature if you have any questions or comments for Mr. Handy. The recital series at First Reformed Church is funded by the Middlesex County Office of Arts and History, and we are grateful to them for continually supporting the series. For information about upcoming events, please join our mailing list at firstreformedchurch.net. We are also serving a free lunch downstairs following the program. We also have parking vouchers. If you parked in the parking deck on Church Street, let me know. I have some parking vouchers for you. And if not, then next time you come join us, park in the church parking deck, and I will have a free voucher for you for the next time.
I wish I'd known that.
All right. Well, you're good.
Anybody out there who parked in the parking deck, we have vouchers.
Yeah, bring them around. And finally, we have a sign-up sheet downstairs if you want to sign up for more information about the lunchtime recitals or anything else that we have running at this in this building. All right? Thank you so much.
How often do you have lunchtime?
Oh, great question. So we have 8 recitals a year. We have 4 in the spring and 4 in the fall. So this is the first one for our spring series. We have a schedule downstairs for the rest of the spring, and we also have, I don't have one printed right now, but maybe I can go print one for the fall as well, so we can get that on your calendars. Okay? So without any further ado, let's have...
Hey, thank you for coming. I have to throw out my whole entire set list because I didn't realize that I'm expected to play beautiful and witty songs. I was going to play raunchy, stupid songs, you know. But I did want to say hi to all my cousins out there from all around the world. New Orleans and Mexico, and New Brunswick, Hillsborough, Somerset, New Brunswick, all right. So, you know, and it's funny because I just did a keynote concert, which is a keynote address with music. I did at the New Jersey State Convention of Women Educators on Saturday, and I started off by saying hi to all of my cousins, and some of the teachers there, they kind of like giggled. And I said, well, come on, you know that we're all cousins, right? I mean, stop and think about this. We are all cousins, we're all related. Now, if you go back, I'm not talking about first cousins, because a first cousin, well, has the same grandparents. So out of the 8 billion people on this planet, what are the chances that you have the same 4 grandparents as somebody else? What if we're talking about second cousins? Well, then you have 8 great-grandparents. There's twice as much chance that you're related. If you go back another generation, it's 16 ancestors, and it goes back and back, and eventually you get to a point where it becomes absurd to think that you're not cousins, right? So why don't you all turn to each other and say, hi, cousins?
Hi, cousin. The elder cousin.
Now there's also, for folks who don't understand literature as well as they understand mathematics, there's a little way to understand that too. It goes like this. And do you know that the population of the planet has been doubling every 42 years? We've all been doubling, all been doubling every 42 years. Can you guys sing that? We've all been doubling, all been doubling every 42 years. Now listen to this. You might not know this, but 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 plus 4 is 8. 8 plus 8 is 16. And the hour is getting late. We've all been doubling, all been doubling every 42 years. We've all been doubling, all been doubling every 42 years. Twice 16 is 32. Next comes 64. Then 128. Do I need to say more? We've all been doubling, all been doubling every 42 years. We've all been doubling, all been doubling every 42 years. Now my Irish friend over here, Dennis, is thinking about Dublin, Ireland. Next comes 256, then 512, then 1,024. You can do the math yourselves. We've all been doubling, a doubling, a doubling. All been a doubling every 42 years. We've all been a doubling, a doubling, a doubling. All been a doubling every 42 years. Well, these numbers are getting really big. I'll tell you, if we double 10 more times, we have ancestors over 1 million. If we double 10 more times after that, and then another 10 times, we have ancestors over 1 billion, over 1 trillion. Now hold on a second. There have never been 1 trillion people on this planet. So that means that some of our ancestors must have married their cousins. And now you and me and everybody in the whole world, we're all cousins. Distant cousins, regardless of the color of our skin or the shape of our eyes or the language we speak or who we love or how we identify. We're all cousins. We've all been doubling, all been doubling every 14 years. So music can be used as a tool of education, and that's a really fun one for the kids. But it's got a profound message for all of us. You know, we're all done. We're all cousins. Think about it. Somebody actually did a calculation once and came up with that, seriously, no kidding, that 99.9% of the people alive in the year 812 are ancestors of 99.9% of the people alive today. Is that amazing? That's absolutely amazing. Okay, so, now, some songs can be instructive. Like Pete Seeger, for instance, wrote a song about how to make maple syrup. He wrote a song about how to make applesauce. He wrote a song about keeping a flame alive, keeping a fire alive. And in that song, there's a line that says that elm wood is very difficult to chop. So I learned something there. But we also can learn songs by their backstories. We can learn from songs because of their backstories. Learn some history, some culture. Well, for instance, in 1955, October 1955, Pete Seeger was on an airplane heading to Oberlin, Ohio, to do a concert at Oberlin. And it was interesting because at that time in 1955, he was blacklisted. Now, if you don't know what blacklisted is, well, here's something that we can learn about, okay? He was accused, and if I had an hour and a half to go into this, I would explain why the labor movement shared some of the values of the communist movement, even though they were kind of, for the most part, two different things going on. But Pete was very involved in the labor movement, and so he was accused of being a communist sympathizer. And he got blacklisted, which meant that nobody would touch him, everybody's afraid, he could hardly find any gigs. Now, the people who blacklisted him saw no harm in Pete playing at schools for young kids, at camps for young kids. But they didn't do their math because they didn't realize that the young kids in the 50s were going to grow up to be college kids in the 60s, right? And what kind of trouble it was having those college kids singing. So he's on his way to Oberlin, Ohio, and he's reading a book of Ukrainian poetry and stories. And there's a story in the Ukrainian culture about, come on up, about an observation that I have made myself. Did you ever notice that young boys, and probably some not so young boys, like to go whack? Have you ever noticed this? Think about this. I have a nephew who's like the nicest kid in the world, smartest kid, most politest, most obedient kid you've ever met. And you put him in the backyard, he's going to pick up a stick and go whack. He'll hit the tree, he'll hit the swing set. He's a good boy, so he won't hit the car. Okay? But you tell him to put down the stick, and he will. He'll pick up a rock and throw the rock in the garage. And it's just the nature, whether it's nature or nurture. It tends to be there tends to be a tendency for young boys to like to go whack. Now, when they get older, they pick up bigger sticks, and it can turn out that a whole bunch of boys are going whack with a whole bunch of other boys, and then maybe they start doing it with rifles and missiles and bombs and stuff like that. Always throughout history, men have been running off to war. And where does that leave the girls, the women? The girls are home to take care of the domestic stuff. And in the process of doing all the domestic stuff, they gather things. So the boys are out causing trouble. Women are home trying to take care of the family. And they gather things like pretty things, like jewelry and flowers. Flowers. So Pete makes this observation, and he pulls out his little notebook that he carries around with him all the time. And scribbles out some notes, and goes to Oberlin, sits down and puts his book down and reads from the notes he wrote down and says, I put a song together today on the way over here. It goes like this. Now, interestingly enough, he borrowed the tune, the original tune that Pete used for the song is borrowed from an Irish lumberjack song. You see, because lumberjacks can go whack too, but in a constructive way. And we can go whack with hammers in a constructive way. So he took this idea about going whack and put it into a constructive melody. Where have all the flowers gone? A long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? The girls had picked them, every one. But I'll bet you we know the Peter, Paul, and Mary version, right? Let's sing it. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? And where have all the young girls gone? Where have all the young girls gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young girls gone? Long time ago. Sounds good. Where have all the young girls? They've taken husbands. They've taken husbands, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the young men gone? Where have all the young men gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young men gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young men gone? And listen to this. They're all in uniform. And that's the way the song ended. Can you believe it? That was the song. Really? Yeah. That was it. And Pete went home and he forgot his book. And he forgot the song. But somebody recorded the show. And so the Oberlin Folk Music Society would sing this song every time they met. I think it was twice a month. And it was so short that they sang it twice. Now there's an interesting thing that was going on in folk music back then. It was popular to do songs that went in circles. There's a song that goes, husband, husband, build me a fire. I can't build you a fire, I have no wood. Husband, husband, go get some wood. I can't get wood, my axe is broken. My axe is dull. Husband, husband, sharpen the axe. I can't sharpen the axe, I have no water for the sharpener. Husband, husband, get some water. I can't get water. There's a hole in the bucket. Husband, husband, fix the bucket. I can't fix the bucket, there's no fire. And so it goes around in a circle and circle. So these guys at the Oberlin Folk Music Society were playing the song, and a fellow named Joe Hickerson came up with this idea. Why not write another verse, or two verses, that go and bring it back to the beginning? Where have all the soldiers gone? Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the soldiers gone? The graveyards. They've gone to graveyards everywhere. When will they ever learn? When will they there's all kinds of educational stuff we can learn from music. All kinds of stuff. You know, so I've been thinking, like, whatever happened to folk music? It's still around, but it used to be very popular. You know, so what happened? Well, all kinds of things happened. For instance, the player piano. You know, before the player piano, now there were a couple of trinkets that were around in the 1700s and stuff like that, but before the player piano, if you wanted to hear music, you had to make it. So, or a bard would come to town, a bard or a troubadour would come to town, and people would drop what they were doing. And it was kind of like, okay, you're working in a field, and the troubadour come to town, you drop your hoe and your rake, and you run down to the square, and there's some guy singing some songs and telling some stories, you know? And the way that we learned music was by singing it. And there were no radios, or television, or internet. And then along comes, well, you know, the radio, the player piano, the wireless, and then eventually phonographs. And at first, there's only a few songs that you could hear. You know, the first song that we recorded was the first song you got to hear. So you start hearing all these recorded songs, and you start forgetting all your own songs. And so there started to become people called song catchers. And the song catchers were people, or like Leadbelly, a rememberer of songs. Rememberer. He's like, oh, I remember a song. Except Leadbelly said, oh, I wrote this song. You know, so Leadbelly, he was a fellow who lived down in the South, learned a lot of old songs, and he actually went around collecting them, finding them so he could sing them. People would come and hear him play. They'd hear him play on his front porch, or they'd hear him play at the jailhouse, depending where he was spending the night. He actually was let out of jail because he was considered so important to American culture. I think he was in for murder, to tell you the truth. But he was sharing songs, and he shared this song with Pete Seeger and a bunch of folks that he claims to have written, although we know that he didn't, but it went like this. When it was recorded by the Weavers in 1950, spent 15 weeks on what they called the hit parade as number one. Number one. Only to be replaced by the same song sang by Frank Sinatra for 1 week. Sometimes I live in the country. Sometimes I live in the town. Sometimes I take the great notion to jump in the river and drown. You know this part, right? Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. So, you know, he was a rememberer of songs. It would be nice if I remembered that song. Leadbelly. So what happens is that there's so much culture in these songs, and we can learn so much about the past, that when there were people remembering these songs, and then there was recording equipment, and they got to a point in the 1920s when this recording equipment now became portable, and people would go put their big, huge recording machines in the back of wagons and travel around the country and start recording these songs to have them for posterity. They called them the song catchers. And Pete became a song catcher. He and Woody Guthrie back in 1940 were sent out to travel all around the country. Sent out to travel all around the country and collect labor songs before they disappeared. And they decided that as long as they're collecting these songs, they might as well make up some themselves. And they hooked up with all kinds of different people. One person they hooked up was a woman named Sis Cunningham. And she wrote a song. It's not even really a labor song, but it's kind of about what was happening in 1940 in Oklahoma. It's called My Oklahoma Home Blown Away. And you can learn a lot of history about here. When they opened up the strip, I was young and full of zip. Now, if you don't know about that, you can look that up. You learn a whole lot of stuff. The United States was expanding. It was after the Civil War. The United States was expanding. The government was actually giving away land to people. And they figured, like, let's get people out to Kansas and Oklahoma and all these places. But the climate was too dry. Interestingly enough, in the late 1800s, there was actually a lot more rain than normal, and so people got away with farming the land for quite a while. And they had a few droughts there, but then in the 1930s, the early 1930s, they had a drought that was so bad, it caused the greatest migration in the history of the United States. Over 1 million people lost their land because of the weather. And they moved mostly to California. When they opened up the strip, I was young, full of zip. I wanted a place to call my own. And so I made the race, and I staked me out a place. And I settled down along the Cimarron. Here's your part. It blowed away, it blowed away, it blowed away, it blowed away. My Oklahoma home blowed away. It looked so green and fair when I built my shanty there. But my Oklahoma home, it blowed away. I planted wheat and oats, got some chickens and some shoats. Ah, what's a shoat? It's a kind of a pig. I aimed for ham and eggs to feed my face. I got a mule to pull my plow, got an old red muley cow, and I got a fancy mortgage on the place. They blowed away, they blowed away, they blowed away. All the crops I planted blowed away. You can't grow any grain if there isn't any rain. All except the mortgage blowed away. Right? They had that problem back then too. Now, you want to learn about some cultural things going on? Times have changed, but this is how it worked back then. It looked so green and fair when I built my shanty there. I figured that I was set for life. So I put on my Sunday best with its fancy scallop vest. And I went to town and picked me out a wife. She blowed away. She blowed away. My Oklahoma woman blowed away. Just as I begged and kissed her, she got picked up by a twister. My Oklahoma woman blowed away. Now I'm never far from home, no matter where I roam. Oklahoma dust is everywhere. It doesn't matter where I'm walking, I can hear my chickens talking. I can hear my wife squawking in the air. They blowed away, they blowed away, they blowed away, they blowed away. Everything I dreamed of blowed away. They're up there in the sky, in that dust cloud rolling by. My Oklahoma home, it blowed away. It blowed away. It blowed away. My Oklahoma home blowed away. It looked so green and fair when I built my shanty there. But my Oklahoma home blowed away. So there's all kinds of history that you can learn. It's amazing, you know, really amazing, really amazing. And so there's other stuff that you can learn from folk music. Now, I imagine that you can learn really cool. So, okay, one of the things about folk music, what makes it folk music? Well, for every person who has a definition of folk music, there's a different definition. So I can get myself in trouble, especially since I'm on TV here, coming up with my definition of folk music. But I think that folk music is music that is about people, about folks. It's about our history, like that song I just sang, our landscape, like the song I just sang, our culture, like the song I just sang, right? Our values and our struggles, like the song I just sang. But I also think it's of and from. Folk music is music of, for, and by the people. It's from it. How does that happen? Well, first of all, we just sang that song together, right? Okay? But sometimes you get to sing a song and you change the words to keep them up to date or to fit the circumstances. You know, there's an old church song. Old church song. Now, part of our history in this country is that we had slavery. You know, it's a bad thing that we had slavery. And our ancestors, my ancestors, well, some of my ancestors, probably all of our ancestors, you know, took some of our other ancestors and made them slaves. Now, when the British did it and the Dutch did it around here, they didn't allow the Africans to bring their instruments. When the Spaniards did it over there in California and Mexico and Florida, they didn't allow their slaves to bring their instruments, but the French did. And the French were the ones who settled New Orleans and Haiti and up the Mississippi River. And there was a slave revolution in Haiti, and a lot of the slaves escaped and then went to New Orleans because that's where people spoke French. And these people had been there for enough generations that that's the language they spoke. They brought their instruments. And they would gather almost daily down in what is now like Union Square or something like that. And they played music. And the music that came out was bluesy, and it was jazzy, and it developed. Blues started in New Orleans. Jazz started in New Orleans. And it made its way up the river to Baton Rouge, St. Louis, Kansas City, up the Mississippi, further up to Chicago, started heading east to Detroit, eventually made it to New York, all these styles of music. Meanwhile, having uprooted people from their culture, there was a movement to indoctrinate all kinds of people, but including the African Americans, with Christianity. And a lot of stuff that happens in Christianity and Judaism is redemption. And who would crave redemption more than someone who's a slave? So they started learning these songs of redemption and songs about, the plight of Jews being slaves in Egypt. So they got big on the Jordan River, stuff like that. Hey, here's a song from some former slaves that moved out to an island off the coast of Georgia and sang this song. You can hear the Christian influence, but this comes from a mix of Native Americans and former slaves and white criminals. Michael rowed the boat ashore, hallelujah. Michael rowed the boat ashore, hallelujah. Sister helped to trim the sails, sister helped to trim the sails. See, so you hear this hallelujah thing going on, right? Well, listen to this one. The Jordan River is deep and wide. I'll meet my mother on the other side. Whoa, the Jordan River, chilly and cold, chills the body, but not the soul. I sang this song once out at a fraternity house in Kansas City to college kids, and they loved it. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, I'm just going to tell you that one time I asked the kids, I said, does anybody know? No, I know what it was. Can anybody make up a verse? And this kid, and it was really quiet for a long time, but finally one kid rose his hand and he said, yeah. He said, I got a verse. He said, what was the name of that river you were singing about? I said, well, that's the Jordan River. Have you ever heard of it? He said, yeah, I think it's in Utah. And you laugh about this, but if you want a little bit of church history, there is a Jordan River in Utah. And it's right smack to this Salt Lake. And it runs right past the Mormon tabernacle. So even the Mormons adopted Jordan as a symbolic thing, you know, the Jordan River. One last time, Michael rowed the boat ashore. Michael rowed the boat ashore, hallelujah. Michael rowed the boat ashore, hallelujah. All right. So today, so what has happened to folk music? Well, I kind of started telling that, but even since the pandemic, people have found, and I started using a credit card during the pandemic because I was afraid to touch people's hands. And you get into the habit, it's actually easier. But you forget mathematics. You forget, you give somebody $20 and they give you change, you're like, oh, I hope that's the right amount of change. When you buy something. So we lose a lot of stuff. But, a long time ago, right here in this building, I was at a songwriters meeting. And we had a seminar, and someone said, so who's your competition? And I was like, oh, Greg, and Mary, He said, no, NFL football. All right? So one of the things that's happening is that now it's Netflix is the competition. It's easier to stay home than to come out and hear live music. Spotify. It's easier to do that. So what do we do? I don't know, but I think it's really important to keep singing. It's really important. This is a very short concert, so I won't get into why it's so important to sing. But, one of Martin Luther King's right-hand men said the marches was the backbone of the civil rights movement, but the songs were the soul. Because you would sing stuff, and you're like, just imagine this, you're a whole bunch of people not allowed to vote. And then you decide that then someone says, yes, you can vote. And so they're going to go down to the courthouse and vote, but they're probably going to get beat up on their way. So they learn something. They take an old song from the 1800s, and think about this in terms of redemption. And the wild fervor you get into when you feel it. The touch of grace and the touch of redemption. You can sing like this. I know I've been bad, but I can be good. I'll be all right someday. I'll be all right. I'll be all right. I'll be all right someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe I'll be all right someday. And all my troubles, I will overcome. I will overcome. I will overcome someday. Whoa, deep in my heart, I do believe I'll be all right someday. And the song evolved because people sang it. And one day, someone was at now I don't know if this story is true, but it illustrates what happened all over the country. Someone said, I want to sing that song at the march. And the march organizer said, the young girl said, I want to sing I'll be all right. Nope, can't sing that. But you can sing we'll be all right. See, and what happened is that didn't happen in just one place. It happened all over because it instilled a value. It reflected the value that I ain't walking down to that courthouse by myself. We will walk down to that courthouse. Okay? So then the song becomes we'll be all right, or we will overcome. And then Pete Seeger gets a hold of it with a few other folks, 4 other folks. And he's at a conference with Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks down at down in Tennessee at the Highlander Music Center. And Pete shows them that song. And he says, we could slow it down, make it more deliberate, like this. And so he's showing Martin Luther King the song, and he says, well, what kind of verses are there? And Pete said, well, I picked out 3 that I thought are really, really sum it up. And they tell a story. That someday we will live in peace. And we will walk down to that courthouse, but we're not doing it by ourselves. We will walk hand in hand. And there's going to be people there who are going to try to stop us and try to hurt us. And we're going to be scared. But we're going to sing in unity and defiance and courage that we are not afraid. So we'll sing that. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We're not afraid today. We are not afraid today. Deep in my heart. We not only just history, because there's a lot of history in that song. That song also is, to me, is the greatest example of the folk process. A song that develops because people sing it over and over and over, and they want to sing what they are experiencing. So if I wrote a verse right now and I said, we'll all eat free lunch. Well, that could be true, and maybe we'll sing it today. But will that resonate with the concert next door? No. But when you sing these ideas that resonate, other people sing them, and they become a part of the song. Which now means the song is telling our story. It's telling our story. It's telling our history. Pete had an amazing song. I haven't taken the time to learn it. Pete's singer, by the way. I haven't taken the time to learn it on the guitar, but I can sing a little bit of it. Now, a lot of people have labeled Pete as a protest singer. And you know, I guess he did sing a couple of protest songs. Very small percentage of the stuff was protest, but they were so powerful because he had already sung songs of community spirit, of celebration, of common ground, that everybody knew the guy, loved the guy. Well, some people hated him, but they listened to him. He had a power because he had gotten into people's hearts. And so he sang a song once, it was an anti-Vietnam War song. But listen to how educational this song can be. Listen to this. Imagine your 8th grade social studies class studying this song. If you love your Uncle Sam, bring them home, bring them home. Bring home our troops from Vietnam. Now, actually, the original words, if you want to study this, bring home our boys from Vietnam. Bring them home, bring them home. And he's very cutting of the military. It'll make the generals sad, I know. Bring them home, bring them home. They want to tangle with the foe. Bring them home, bring them home. So at this point, the song is kind of like black and white. You know, there's a Vietnam War, and it's bad. But then he says something really interesting in one of the later verses. There's one thing I must confess. Bring them home, bring them home. I am not a pacifist. Bring them home, bring them home. If some army invaded this land of mine, bring them home, bring them home. You'll find me on the firing line. Bring them home, bring them home. You know, I learned this song at the time of the Fallujah uprising in Iraq. I can just imagine an Iraqi singing that same exact line. If some army invaded this land of mine, you'd find me on the firing line. You know? So it gets you thinking, right? And who says that you're right anyway? But it gets you thinking. I may be right, I may be wrong. Bring them home, bring them home. But I have a right to sing this song. Bring them home, bring them home. So much we can learn. So much, so much. So much we can learn. It's amazing. So what do we do today? I swear that it is not the 1950s. I swear, I am convinced it's not the 1950s. I'm convinced it's not the 1960s or the 70s. I think it's the 2020s. And I think that, unlike the 1960s, where the hip people, or the really cool people who got it, understood, you know, maybe the government isn't the greatest thing after all. I think it's the hip people who realize, you know, maybe the government can do some stuff for us. You know, the counterculture to tear things down. Maybe it's time to stop tearing things down to build things back up. How do we do that? Whatever happened to the civility? Whatever happened to integrity? You know? So I think we need to write new songs that everybody can sing and maybe celebrate the virtues. Like this one. This one came to me in a dream. I hear the songs you're singing. They're coming from your hearts. Yes, they're coming from the same place. The very first song got its start. They weave 100,000 stories. Each one of them unique. With the golden thread that binds us. Every soul longs to be free. Sing it. Every soul longs to be free. They're singing. Give us freedom. Give us freedom. Give us freedom. Freedom now. Give us freedom. Give us freedom. Give us freedom. So I got that imagery, and then I went to my little notebook that I showed you before. I kept notes, and I wrote down notes of all kinds of different things that Pete Seeger told me, and I took out a couple of them and put them in this song. If everybody had clean water and food enough to eat, if we could satisfy these hungers, of these needs we shall be free. Then we can build the roofs above us, sew the clothes that keep us warm. If we could learn to stick together, we could weather any storm. What? We could weather any storm. Sing it! Give us freedom, give us freedom, give us freedom, freedom now. Listen. Give us freedom, give us freedom, freedom now. I've heard it said the road to freedom is a long and winding way, and that we need a proper compass so we don't all run astray. What does it matter where we find it? From within, from above, we will know the tool is worthy if the needle always points to love. What's that? The needle always points to love. Give us freedom, give us freedom, give us freedom, freedom now. Give us freedom, give us freedom, give us freedom, freedom now. So I was thinking about that. And I was thinking, I decided to call this song The Compass. And we know that the tool is worthy if the needle points to love. But where do we find that compass? So I was thinking about that. Some find the compass in our culture. Some find it in a book. Some find it in their own hearts, if they're brave enough to look. Some find the compass out in nature, the rivers and the trees. Some see it in their neighbors, hear it in the songs they sing. What does it matter where we find it? Within, without, from above. We will know the tool's worthy. Why? If the needle always points to love, the needle always points to love. Well, thank you, Bill, Wendy, Joan, Dennis, Scott. Eugene, Lauren, Gary. First letter? Oh, so. Thank you all for coming to the show. Oh, and Mariella, thank you so much for inviting me back.
Absolutely.
So I just want to tell you what I've been doing lately. So I've been talking a little bit about the education aspect of stuff. I'm also working on, there's 2 projects I'm working on right now. Me and a bunch of folks from around the country, a bunch equally to 4, we're writing a theatrical concert of 250 years of, well, it's going to be called Folk Music. Well, we don't know the title yet, but here's a working title. Folk Music and 250 Years of American History. That we're going to be traveling around the United States in 2026 doing that. Meanwhile, I'm writing a blog, a series of articles called Looking for America. So if you guys ever read that kind of stuff, it's at Substack. Have you ever heard of that? That's where you can find Dan Rather, Patti Smith, Jeff Tweedy, and all kinds of other cool people writing that kind of stuff. So you can read, and who knows, I might have a conversation with one of you folks downstairs while we're eating our free lunches. That's why we came, right? And that could end up in a blog. I mean, the one I'm writing for this week is based on 2 conversations I had yesterday. Pretty fascinating. So thank you very much. I have some CDs and cassettes. Well, no, I have CDs and T-shirts. You can check that out. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Oh yeah, we have nothing online.
No.
We have a record viewing go online. Thank you, Spook, for encouraging our online audience. Does anyone have any questions for Spook, or we could have a conversation downstairs as well, whatever you like.
Okay, great.